Hello, and welcome back to Beyond the Numbers with McKissock Appraisal. I'm your host, Julie Mollendorp, and today my guest is Robbie Wilson. Robbie, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, wow. That's the dreaded question. Let's see here. Obviously, my name is Robbie Wilson. I've been in the industry now since '89. Currently, I'm the Chief Appraiser, Risk Compliance Officer for RSDS. I'm also the President of National Society of Real Estate Appraiser, which we abbreviate to say NSREA. In appraisal practice, I've done pretty much everything, but now I focus on residential property. I've done a little bit of commercial, some residential, some industrial, and also water system and wastewater evaluation as well.
Okay, where are you located, Robbie?
I'm in Dallas, Texas.
Okay, Dallas, Texas. So, RSDS, tell me a little bit. They have a different approach to the residential appraisal world. Tell me a little bit about the RSDS philosophy.
RSDS philosophy is basically, it was created less than 2 years ago to solve a generational problem. What I say is generational problem in the appraisal practice, basically to knock down barriers of entry, and sometimes we hear about labor shortages, etc. So, and then it was created basically to knock down barriers, increase diversity, and then make the profession better, in a nutshell.
Great. So when you say knock down barriers, what do you mean? Do you mean the supervisor barrier to entry?
This is a training company. We're exclusively a training company.
Okay.
So since
training new appraisers.
New appraisers, right, in the residential space. In less than 2 years, we just to show you how much we've accomplished in a short time in knocking down barriers. We've graduated at least 31 licensed and certified appraisers.
31
31
licensed and certified appraisers.
Right.
Is that in the Dallas market or where is that?
Nationwide. We have offices so many offices. I can't memorize it, but our big offices in Kansas, San Diego, Phoenix, Dallas. Those are the training centers. We have offices in Austin, San Diego. I'm going to repeat some of these. Nashville, several, Minneapolis, Atlanta, et cetera, et cetera.
So when you say training center, you said Kansas City is one of your training centers.
Correct.
What do you mean by training center? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the training center is a facility where we have a physical office. We have trainers and trainee matched, and it's our big office. That's where we do most of the training, compared to the non-training centers where if we have graduates, like in Austin, it's not a training center. So some of our graduates may want to relocate to Austin, or they may want to relocate to Charlotte, North Carolina, or San Antonio after they graduate. So we have the facilities, we have the trainers and the trainees and the resources in those training centers to train trainees.
Okay. So they train in a specific geographic location, but they may not end up staying there for their career. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. Well said.
Okay. So how do you find your trainees?
That's a little bit about my pay grade, but Dr. Randy Flower, the VP of Operations, he does most of that. But I think we use the technology. I really don't know much about how we find them. That's not my area. Is more of the appraisal training area. When they come in, then I do some of the trainings, and we do trainings every month.
So you are training appraisers in different areas? How do you train appraisers that aren't physically in your area?
Oh, I go to those campuses,
Okay.
Right.
So you do some in-person training,
right,
as well.
Some done through distance learning, through Zoom.
Okay, and so you do some through Zoom, some in person.
Right.
I follow one of your trainers here in the Kansas City market, Adam Newsom. He does some pretty amazing training on site, doing some kind of module-based learning. Tell me a little bit about that. How does that program work?
Yeah, yeah. Items are again. The trainers have discretion. Let me put it like this: the trainers have discretion to train to their own style. You
Okay.
know, so Adam Side is very unique and very popular. Adam is an awesome guy. So he's pretty. He uses social media from what I know, what I observe. He uses social media a lot, but his training style is more on the social end. But every trainer have their own style.
Okay.
My job mostly is more of making sure they're in compliance, they follow regulation, follow follow laws and regulation.
Okay.
I don't get into.
Let's go more into that in depth. You said you're the compliance officer for RSDS. How does that work with so many different locations and so many trainees? What are your duties as the compliance officer? What do they look like?
Basically say Kansas City, look at Missouri, look at the laws for trainee and trainers, what kind of assignments will have them qualify to get their license. If they're doing an assignment, make sure that they're not in violation of the law, so just stuff like that. And make sure that the 3 areas that they are required to follow, that the education is up to par, the experience is up to par, and they get them ready for the exam. Sometimes some states have different variations in requirements. Okay. So as a compliance officer, my job is to make sure I know those requirements and keep them informed of those so they can be on track.
Right. That's no small job. I hold licenses in Missouri and Kansas, and just keeping track of the different requirements for those 2 states is at times can be difficult. I can't imagine as many states as you work with. How do you keep all that straight?
Well, that's what I have a good team.
You have a routine, okay? Tell us.
Yeah, I have a good team. Yeah, I'm not the only one that do the job. So we have an excellent team.
Okay.
Right.
Oh, you have a team. Okay.
A team,
I get it. So with the RSDS model, you have your training centers, right, and the appraisers get the majority of their training there, right? And then they relocate to different markets. How does that work? How do they choose a market?
How they choose, again, that's more on the operation side, but most of them do relocate, and that's why we have several. I think we have about 30-something offices nationwide now.
Okay, so when they relocate, how do they get that geographic competency piece? What do they do?
Oh, well, I guide them through it. Basically, we get there, we have them drive the neighborhood, we do some research about the community just to get started, and then walk them through. Basically, I hold their hands and walk them through the process if they need to.
Okay. And then do you maintain that relationship with them, or do they go out on their own?
Well, everybody's different. So some people I spend a bit more time with. Some people I spend a few times with. Some I spend, everybody's different. And so sometimes some of those people already know those areas anyway. That's how they choose to go back there.
Oh, okay. That's an interesting perspective. So they may live, say, Seattle.
Correct.
But they come to one of your training centers and they get their training there, and then they may go back to what was originally kind of their home base.
Exactly. Not everybody do that, but some do that.
Okay. That's another opportunity. And right now, we're always in the discussion of, how do we break down that traditional supervisor trainee barrier? Because so many qualified and amazing people aren't coming into the profession because they can't find a supervisor. Right. So that's an interesting way to look at that situation and kind of overcome that hurdle. I think that has significant potential. So I'm sure, you understand the appraisal profession as you do. Critics of your model say it's just an appraiser factory that You're not getting qualified individuals. And the work I've seen has been outstanding. What do you say when someone says, how can you effectively train this many people this quickly?
I just ignore it. I don't know if that's the right answer. But no, we are not an appraisal factor. I don't even know what that means. I'm sure the people that are getting a license and being empowered to make good income, take care of their family, don't see anything like that.
Right. It's a different way to look at the supervisor trainee program. Very, very interesting. So how did you come to join RSDS?
Oh, that's an interesting story. I know the owners at least 10 years from maybe 12 years now, or maybe 13, who knows? It's been a long time. I met them through, when I was doing consulting work, I just left Fannie Mae at the time. So I was doing consulting work for AMC. I think I don't remember exactly how, but I think I saw an ad, or something. But anyway, I got connected to Scott and Rich, and then I worked with them as a consultant at that time, and then we maintained a relationship. And then when they set the company up, I'm cutting the story short. When they set the company up, they reached out to me, and then I joined them.
Great. So you said exploring diversity in the profession is one of the focuses of the RSDS model.
Right.
How do they go about promoting diversity within the profession?
But again, some of these questions are operational questions. They're not, because it's a big company. We have almost up to about 100 people. We have supposed to have at least 15 people, appraisal by 85. So it's a big company. So they go about, basically from my perspective, it's just recruiting. They recruit African Americans, they recruit a lot of women, females, minorities in general. And they're young. Even the white populations are also young compared to the average age of appraisers in the industry.
Right.
So that's in itself is diversity, bringing young professionals into the industry.
So how do they recruit? Do they go to colleges? How do they connect?
Also, again, you asked me questions that are operational questions. Sorry.
It's
But
okay.
I wish Dr. Randy Flowers is on this call, but he can answer that a whole lot better than I can.
Okay.
So, but they use text messages. They use a lot of social media, and advertising. No, we've only gone to colleges once. Well, at least in Dallas, we've been to colleges once. And now that I think about it, I think they've gone to colleges in the Phoenix area and the Kansas City area quite a bit. Yeah.
Interesting. So what does RSDS plan to do in the future? What are their goals? What are you looking at coming up on the horizon?
From my perspective, just recruit more people. That's knock down more barriers. Bringing more diversity to the profession. That's what we're known for.
So how are you handling the current slowdown in the residential lending market? How are you making sure you have enough work to be done?
What I can tell you is we're doing very well on, we're not laying off a lot of people. I believe we have good clients, and that's what's keeping us stronger. That's how far I can go on that.
Okay. So you said the training centers are Kansas City, Dallas. What were the training centers?
Yeah, Kansas City, Phoenix, Dallas to San Diego.
Kansas City, Phoenix, Dallas, San Diego. Great. And how many supervisory appraisers do you have in each of those markets?
I would estimate we have about, I think, 35 trainers overall.
Okay.
So if you split that, that's approximately almost 10 in each center, approximately.
Okay. 10 supervisors in each center. Very interesting. That's an
approximation, right?
Okay. So, Robbie, you also told us that you are the president of, what was the organization again?
National Society of Real Estate Appraisers.
National Society of Real Estate Appraisers. Tell us a little bit about that organization.
Okay, it was founded in California. Better said, it was organized in California in 1956 as an affiliate of National Association of Real Estate Brokers. It's called NSREA. And it was, at the time, when it was founded because most of Black appraisers at the time were not allowed to join other professional organizations. But it was incorporated in the state of Michigan in 1958, and the name was amended to National Society of Real Estate Appraisal. Basically, it's an African-American organization. It caters to education, just like any other trade association. It caters to training, designation, and then business development.
Okay. So how large is that organization?
It's large given the demographic that we have. As you know, in the profession itself, depending on the data you look at, some data will indicate that obviously the population will have about maybe 13.4% of Blacks in the United States. So if you look at some data, we say appraisers 1.something%.
Right.
The foundation, the Appraisal Foundation says 4.something%. So that the point I'm making that just based on demographic, appraisers were not even in the thousands.
Right.
Even though it would be close to 10,000. That's the more reason why, going back to what we were discussing a few minutes ago, those who are recruiting minority to the industry, they're making a big difference.
So what does the organization do? What is your country?
Oh, it's a trade association. What we do is education. That's our primary mission.
Okay. And how do you accomplish that? You teach?
We're education providers. We provide C classes, continuing education classes. We provide qualifying classes. Sometimes we work with partners like McKissock and then Appraisal Institute, and then other providers to use their platform. But basically, it's education, training, and professional development.
So the goal is education and training of new and existing appraisers and also realtors, or just appraisers?
No realtors.
No realtors, just appraisers.
Just appraisers. But the PED, for lack of a better word, the PED NARAB, the one that we're affiliated to, they train realties, which is another word for realtor.
Okay. So both professions in the larger organization.
Right.
Great. And in the times right now, as we're talking about appraisal bias and diversity, equity, and inclusion, how is your organization assisting the profession to do better? How are you helping us learn?
Well, we believe that, basically it's education. We've done a lot of educational seminars. So to help educate appraisers as to the different form of bias and how to conduct themselves to not exhibit bias. We've done a lot of seminars. We've worked in conjunction with other trade associations, ASA, AI, can't name all of them right now. I'm
sure. I understand. The appraiser alphabet.
Right.
So when you do those sorts of seminars, what do you teach? How do you teach that to appraisers?
Don't be biased. Don't discriminate. Follow the law. Follow the guideline. Conduct yourself in a professional way. Be independent. Be objective. Be impartial. That's basically what we teach.
Okay. And most appraisers will tell you they already are impartial, unbiased, objective. What do you do to help them understand maybe unconscious biases or some practices that they may be following that could lead to biased appraisal results? How do you help them examine their thought processes?
But again, that's an educational process. But again, from my perspective, yeah, okay, this is where I have a different thought process. Unconscious bias is, to me, is an excuse, So, because whether it's unconscious or conscious, it's still against the law. So,
Sure.
the president need, what I would teach as an instructor is you need to be conscious when you put your professional hat on or what you're doing. So there's no any unconsciousness whatsoever of any kind.
Okay.
So that's what I would teach, is, in other words, unconscious bias is not acceptable. Conscious bias is not acceptable. Any bias is not acceptable.
True. So most appraisers assume that they are operating in an unbiased manner. So how do you help them understand how maybe to rethink some of their appraisal processes? I'm sure you come against some resistance when we have those conversations. I know I do as a USPAP instructor. How do you begin those discussions with an appraiser who says, I'm unbiased. How dare you question me? How do you approach that? How do you have that conversation?
Well, if the person says I'm not biased, then there's no issue. If they believe they're not biased, I mean, that's what we can go by. If they believe they're not biased, there's no issue, right? But in general, what I teach is you have to watch your conduct.
Okay.
Language that you use. For example, you can't say you're going to a neighborhood and to use the word packing, if you know, it's a Texas phrase, I guess.
Right. You're in Texas.
Right. So you can't be going to the neighborhood and be packing or carry a gun, to be more specific, and that conduct in itself is demonstration of bias. Why you go to one neighborhood and carrying a gun and go to another neighborhood and not carrying a gun?
Okay.
So if you see yourself doing that, that in itself may be an example of unconscious bias. But if you see yourself doing that, then you need to check yourself and ask yourself, why am I carrying a gun if I'm going to this neighborhood? But if I'm going to another neighborhood, I'm not carrying a gun. That in itself that should inform that appraiser of the unconscious behavior.
Right. That could be a preconceived notion.
Right.
I understand that. So when an appraiser tells you, well, I'm packing when I go to this area because it does statistically have a higher crime rate. How do you address that?
Well, crime rate, professionally, it depends on how they report it, right? But there's crime rate in every community, even in the highest of the highest community. So it's just the significance of that in the report, which in most residential reports is not significant. So basically, how do you pick your crime? If everything is influenced by the same factor, then it's a non-issue.
Right. And, we hope that we're operating in an unbiased manner. If you can't be operating impartially, then probably this isn't the correct profession choice for you. But appraisers are frequently uncomfortable with having this discussion where we talk about any potential bias. And we've read the studies that say appraisers are more likely to come in farther below the sales contract price in areas that are predominantly people of color. What is your thought process there? How do you feel about that?
The way I feel about it is very simple. As human beings, we are biased. Okay, I want to be clear about that. If I'm talking to my daughter, or family member, or a friend, I may say I like this type of ice cream. To use the example that some people use, this type of ice cream versus the other one. That in itself is bias. But once you put your professional hat on, and this is the key, once you put your professional hat on, you cannot be biased in any form. And it's not only to just appraisers. It's almost every decent profession out there do not tolerate bias when you're acting professionally. A teacher cannot be biased professionally. A doctor cannot be biased professionally.
Right.
So an appraiser cannot be biased when they put the professional hat on. When they're acting as an appraiser, you cannot be biased. Now, when you're not acting as an appraiser, you can be yourself and do whatever you need to do to be who you are. But once you're acting as an appraiser, that's the key. That's where you need to be conscious of what you're doing And then you need to be aware of your surroundings, and you need to be aware of your conduct and your behavior. When you're acting as an appraiser, that's the key phrase.
Right. I teach this frequently in classes, that when you step on site for that property inspection, you are Switzerland. You are completely neutral. You have no opinions one way or another, whether it's sports team or politics or any of those things. You refrain from any of those conversations when you're on site. And it's our human nature to want to connect with people and to connect with a homeowner. But you really have to remove that mindset when you are doing that physical inspection piece. How do you teach appraisers how to stay neutral?
Well, I have a slightly different view. I don't think the appraiser needs to connect with the property owner. They're there to do a job. They just need to conduct themselves professionally. They don't need to be having a casual conversation with the property owner. And that can also become a distraction too. That's what I see.
Right.
You know, when you get there, stay focused on your job, do your job. The property owner follows you around, wants to have a conversation with you. You just let them know that you're there to collect data. And then once you collect all the data that you need, you're going to sit down with them and answer all their questions.
Right.
Yeah, I don't see any need for the appraiser to try to. What's the point of connecting with the property owner, isn't it?
Right. And my point, maybe I wasn't completely clear on that. It's human nature when you are meeting a person to try and connect, but you have to separate yourself from that, your instincts there when you are doing that property inspection, and you are on site just to gather those facts.
Right.
Sure.
Right. Because on the other hand, I just thought about this. On the other hand, you can't go to people's house and tell them how beautiful the house is, and how nice the house is, how awesome the property. So bias is not only negativity or negative adverse. It's also unnecessary positivity.
Sure.
You can't go there and tell somebody, "Oh, this is the best house I've seen in my whole life," etc. You can't do that.
Right. That human nature to connect and compliment, you have to stay away from that when you're doing a physical inspection. You want date of remodeling, renovations, those kind of things. You want ages of the systems, that mindset, but you don't want, I like your flooring or your paint color.
Well, I know
Talk more about the basics. What is it? How old is it? What have you done to it?
Right.
Very good.
Yeah. Again, this all goes to credibility. I feel credibility is established at the time of inspection if the property owner is there.
True.
Because the way you conduct yourself or the way one conduct themselves is what's going to establish credibility. So if you're overly friendly, that will be misconstrued. Thinking that you're promoting their own agenda. If you're overly distant, that may be misconstrued as being, a hater or something like that.
Right.
So
Sure.
there have to be a balance. That's why I keep coming back to, once you put your professional hat on, you act as an appraiser, you have to be conscious of your whole entire conduct.
Sure. And I'm of the philosophy that a little education beforehand of that homeowner as to what they can expect. And if they do have questions about their appraisal, the process they have to go through. And I try to also help them understand what we as the appraiser are bound by, that it's not, we don't want to speak to them after the appraisal is finished, but we're not allowed to. That our client relationship, if they have questions, need clarifications, that it has to go through their lender, and the lender comes to us, that we're not allowed to talk to them directly. And if you can do that education up front, it makes the process a little easier down the road.
Correct.
Right. Also, for example, right now, as we're talking about the change in measurement standards to using the ANSI measurement standard, if we're looking at a property that maybe previously was considered the above grade square footage, and now we're considering it in kind of a different light when we're using the ANSI measurement standard and talking about what's considered to be below grade. Educating someone up front that no, your property square footage didn't change, but what is changing is how we report it on the appraisal report. We run into that a lot here in the Midwest with basements and that kind of thing. Are you seeing anything related to that in your market in Texas?
Not really, because there's not a lot of basement property here in Texas. So those are exceptions, at least in the Dallas market. Texas is pretty big.
Right.
Yeah, in the Dallas market, it's very, very, very rare to find basement. That's an exception.
That would be nice. That's a difficult thing that we're fighting right now in my market, is the way we report those above and below grade areas according to that ANSI measurement standard. So I know appraisers are having some of those conversations up front with realtors and homeowners both when they're doing their inspection piece.
Right. Yeah. ANSI, just from the little that I know about ANSI, it's very strict about any portion below grade is not included in the GLA.
That's correct.
Yeah.
If any part of that level is below grade, the entire level is below grade.
Right.
Right. And the difficulty comes when that's not how your assessors report it, or that's not how your realtors report it. So the appraiser is responsible for reconciling, and that often falls in the educating section of what we do as an appraiser to help someone understand how to read their report and how to understand their report.
I agree.
Yeah, that's a challenge we're seeing across the board, I think, right now.
Right.
All right. So, Robbie, what do you see? What's in your future? What have you got going on the horizon?
Oh, wow. That's it. It's just impressive. I guess what my wish would be for the economy to come back, interest rate go back down,
Right.
so we can have more vibrancy in the industry. That would be a good feature for everybody.
Sure.
Sure. So me, I don't just keep doing what I'm doing. I'm just happy to be alive. That's
Well,
I don't know.
We are lucky to have you in the profession, Robbie. You've always been a great voice for appraisers in the market, and especially promoting diversity within the appraisal profession. That is much appreciated. It's always good to have people on the forefront that are thinking proactively. We do appreciate that. So, do you have any final thoughts, anything you would like to close with, Robbie?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you very, very much for doing this. I appreciate it. And I know it took a while to get it all organized, but I appreciate the patience. So I thank you, thank everybody involved in this process for giving me the opportunity to add my 2 cents.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us today, Robbie. And we'll look forward to big things coming from you in the future. And this is your host, Julie Mollendorf. This has been Beyond the Numbers with McKissock Appraisal. Thank you for being here today.